So the question tells you to assume that there's no contract to this point. Before the president presses send on his email, in his own email inbox, he receives a cancellation of the offer, a revocation. He doesn't read this in his inbox. He doesn't click on the message, and then he sends out his acceptance. So is a contract form. She already said classically no, so now we're going to move on to is a modern contract form under either the UCC or common law. So I would hit on all these provisions because there aren't many of them and he's going to give points for them. And they're not obviously inapplicable. So the first one I would do is section 45. And what you want to ask yourself, what you want to say on the exam is section 45 is only applicable to promises that are only acceptable by performance. So you want to ask yourself, is this only acceptable by performance? And the answer is no, because he's expecting the president to call back and give his acceptance. That's the Home Office approval clause. So that's a quick 1 point that you can get. It's not, he can accept by promise, so 45, there's no option contract. Does that make sense? All right, so then the next thing you want to do is go to 87.2. This is another option contract / reliance provision in modern doctrines. The way I like to do it when I'm working through this, and you can figure out how to write this down on the exam, but this is what I would do in my head. First, look at the problem and say, is there a reliance, and if so, is it substantial? So what we have here is a check being drafted, the guy calling his stores and telling them to get ready for this shipment of large quantities of flashlights. So that's the reliance. Was it substantial? My thinking is no on this one. I mean, he draws up a check. How much money does that really cost? Maybe you can argue that having the stores move things around, getting ready for this big shipment, that's substantial reliance. I'm not sure that it is. And it's really easy to say, I don't think that there's substantial reliance, and if there is, there's no contract under 87.2. But if there is, and then you'll go on. I think you want to hit as many things as possible, even if you think it's no. Still take this yes avenue, because I think it's no. But I know he's going to give points for this, so go down that avenue, because it's not clear cut. So let's say, okay, I think it's not substantial, but let's say that it is substantial. What's the next thing you want to ask yourself? Was this substantial reliance foreseeable by the offeror? He makes his offer to sell flashlights on the 30th, right? And he knew that this company was probably going to make a large order. So I think that those are the two arguments for that it was foreseeable. I think the better argument is that he was expecting a phone call from the president of the company. It's a Home Office approval clause. So I don't think he would expect performance or reliance before he received that phone call. That's what I think the best argument is. You may disagree and want to say yes. If you do think it was reliable or foreseeable, then there's a contract under 87.2. And that's that in modern contract. If you don't think it's foreseeable, like I don't, then there's no contract, and you move on. Any questions on that one?
I'm sorry, what letter is it? C, D?
E.
E.
Yeah.
Whenever you comment on a promise or promise for performance offer, if I buy all the stuff that I need to buy to start performing, but before I start performing, and I never give notice that I bought anything to the offeror, and before I start performing, the offeror revokes its offer. Under classical doctrine, that's okay because it didn't give notice and there's no contract formed.
Yeah, let's say that.
But could I use, let's say I spent $150.
Yeah, you definitely want to go immediately to these.
Can I
The
use
big
that?
thing on that is, so in your hypothetical, I think there's pretty clearly reliance to all this stuff.
Yeah,
Was that foreseeable? If I tell you I'm gonna mow your yard, is it foreseeable that you're gonna go out and buy a bunch of gasoline, weed eaters, all that stuff? So that's what you would wanna argue on that. You definitely wanna use that though.
okay.
And that's the exact same example as this, just less complicated.
But then, the court would not make the contract enforceable, they would just like give me the money that I spent.
Not under 87.2, and that's why I started with 87.2, because there's no limitation on damages under 87.2.
Okay.
It's just a contract, it's just a modern contract, whatever you wanna call that, but it is a contract. If, you have a question? So if we go down this no avenue, and there's no contract under 87.2, next thing you're gonna wanna do is go to 90. The reason that you do 90 last is because there is a limitation on damages. So you're going to kind of go through the same flow chart in your mind. Is there reliance? The difference is there doesn't have to be substantial reliance under 90. There just has to be reliance. I think the no argument is not a good one on here because, you know, they've written the check, they called the stores to pay for the flashlights. There's clearly some reliance. Was the reliance foreseeable? You have the exact same argument. You can cut and paste on your exam if you want from the previous thing. Just drop it in here. It's the exact same argument. Was it foreseeable? No, there's no contract. If there is a contract, however, how detrimental was this reliance? Because your damages are limited as justice so requires or whatever crap they throw at you. So however much it costs to cut a check, however much it costs to move things around in your stores, that's all you're going to get out of a lawsuit. If it costs you $50, you're going to pay $50, and the other people will pay $50. So that's why you do 90 last, because the damages amount are much less than under 87.2 or 45. Does that make sense? Those are your common law. Since this is a UCC one, you could start under 2205. I just wanted to make sure I got through those timing-wise. So 2205 is the UCC provision. Flashlights are good, so we're under the UCC. So the 2205 has a few elements. The first element you'll want to ask yourself is the offeror a merchant? And it's important. Can y'all see this? Sorry, I can this. I was running out of room.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Right.
Yeah, this
Y'all can't see
is
this.
terrible.
Tell me. Sorry. So, one thing I think you should note is that in 2205, both parties don't have to be a merchant. That's really important because that changes in different provisions. Sometimes it'll say, if each party is a merchant, then this just says in some form or fashion, if the offeror is a merchant. So you only have to find one guy as a merchant. That's really important. Clearly, Abel's going to be a merchant. He's like this manufacturer, seller of flashlights. He deals in the goods as part of his business. He's a merchant. There's no question there. If he's not, there's no contract, but he is. So yes. So the next thing you're going to want to ask, and the next element of 2205, is was the offer made? Was it made in writing or was it signed? So I believe this was an email offer. That constitutes writing. You're good there. Maybe there's a question about whether or not an electronic signature is a signature for 2205. Signature is something, I like to think of as something that's difficult to replicate. This electronic, it's hard to debate either side because you're either going to say an electronic signature is a signature, or you're going to say that it's not. I think Presby wants you to say that something signed via an email or written document is going to be a signature. I think that's what you'll want to say on the end. That's what you'll want to come out as. You could say there could be some debate, like it's debatable. I think the answer is yes, that it's a signed and it's a writing. Yep.
Does it need to be signed by both sides or on the offer?
Does 2205 I'm not sure that 2205 is to be signed by both sides. Can I see that real quick? Just make sure. Yeah, this says an offer by a merchant to buy or sell goods in a signed writing. So they're just talking about the offer being in a signed writing. There are, once you get, next semester you'll get into, it's called statute of frauds. You have to have both sides.
Okay.
Don't worry about that now.
Does it matter
offeree, the offeror has to be the merchant. An offer by a merchant, so the offeror has to be a merchant. It makes no difference whether the offeree is a merchant. Yeah, good question. So the next thing is there the promise has to be held open. This is what's called a firm offer. If you have a merchant, if he makes an offer that's not in writing. What's that? Okay, so 2205 is about firm offers.
Just a second one, I couldn't hear. Is what?
If he's a merchant, if he makes an offer that's in writing and signed by him, and if that offer is held open, or if he promises he's going to hold this offer open for a certain amount of time, then it's going to make an option contract, like we talked about earlier. And if it's accepted within the time of this contract. So the last element you want to talk about here is, was this promise, did he promise that this offer that he made was going to be held open? And if you look at the facts, he says they say they're going to wait until July 5th to hear from him. So I think that that's pretty clearly a promise that he's going to be held open. And under that scenario, it's going to be an option contract he accepted, so there's going to be this UCC contract. You can start with this. I was just trying to get through these to make sure, because there's more. Those are going to come up a lot.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, is there any, what is the best way to organize it in writing? First, say about all these restatement provisions, and then.
What I would definitely do is always start with 87.2. I don't mean start the problem with it, but never do 90 before 87.2.
But what about if it wasn't an offer, it was a promise, so we wouldn't even take 87 in consideration, right?
If it was what?
If it wasn't an offer, it was only a promise, indefinite and.
If it wasn't an offer, I think 87.2 requires it to be an offer. 90, it just says, is there promise?
And that's what I'm asking, so we won't say anything like a word, it won't work?
I would definitely say 87.2 won't work because this isn't an offer. I think anything you can say to get a point, half a point, whatever is good to say. Because there's so few modern doctrines, when he asks a modern question, unless he specifically tailors it to a provision, then I would throw it all against the wall.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted you, so we did this statement first, and then.
On this one, honestly, I would start with 2205. You probably know, I mean, when you're taking the exam, if one of these is going to be end up as a contract or not. So I don't think there's any harm in starting with 2205, especially since this is a UCC problem. And then I would come out that yes, it is a contract, and then say, but even if it, let's just say a court says that the signature wasn't valid, and so this isn't good. Then you can go up here to 45, you can knock that out really quick. You can even do this last, because that's just one sentence.
Is it like a consequence, or it's a substitution, or it's like in the same row, 45, 87, 90, and then UCC, it's like the same row and 4 options, or?
So on your problem, maybe I would start off with 2205, then I would probably go to 87.2, then I would go to 90, and then 45. It's not the order that I did it. Because these are the 3 ones that you're going to get the most points out of, because there's the most stuff
So
to
it's
talk about.
sequence, I thought maybe it's like a substitution somewhere else too.
No, I'm sorry, I just drew this because I was running out of room. Yeah. Any questions on that? All right, cool. So that's all we're going to do today. Perfect timing, guys. Like I said, next week, y'all have this handout that I showed at the beginning, this modern exam problem that he handed out? Here.
I don't think I got the ones that she made.
No, it looks like this. Even
No,
if you
like
take it out.
this one, did you have this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else?
Y'all have this? He gave this out, so I'm not sure he's handed it out.
Yeah, you're in the
So do you have this one? Okay.